much, everyone. Am I on? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Wow, that was strange. There's no monitor feeding back to me. I'm glad you can hear me. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking your Monday night to be here with us at the 92nd Street Y. My name is Ruthie Fierberg. I'm the creator and host of the podcast Why We Theater, and I am so excited to be talking to these three incredible women tonight about the production that you just watched a phenomenal documentary about. For those of you who are watching online, the documentary is going to premiere this Friday, May 27th on PBS. Check your local listings. We hope you watch it. Thank you all again for being here in person to see it. Now, of course, those of you who are in person know the story of Company very well by now, if you didn't before you walked in the doors. But for those of you at home, I just want to give a little precursor in case you're thinking, should I come see this show? What is it about? Stephen Sondheim described the story of Company, which first premiered on Broadway in 1970, as a man with no emotional commitments reassesses his life on his 35th birthday by reviewing his relationships with his married acquaintances and girlfriends. That is the entire plot. But director Marianne Elliott and her producing partner, Chris Harper, had the brilliant idea to make it relevant to today and more interesting in my eyes to make it a woman, played by Katrina Lenk. So we have Bobby with an IE. Absolutely, so well deserved. Okay. And so, of course, the production has already won numerous awards, including the GLAAD Media Award for Best Broadway Production, 2 Drama League Awards. It has 8 Drama Desk Award nominations and 9 Tony Award nominations, including Best Musical Revival. And it's all made by these women here and continues to be made anew each night at the Bernard Jacobs Theater. So I want to get right into it, Marianne, and start with you. The story goes that you have never seen a production of Company until your own, but you grew up listening to the album. I'm curious, what made you fall in love with it to begin with? What made you say, I have something to bring to life through my version of Company? When my dad died, my mum's an actress, and she went to work in Sheffield, which is a bit away from where I was brought up. I was brought up in Manchester, which is North England. That's all you need to know. And she lived with these 2 guys, and they became our uncles, really. And they walked me down the aisle, actually. They became very close. And they were really into their musical theatre. And they used to play musical theatre all the time. So I was introduced to it then, and they loved their Stephen Sondheim. So I would hear the record going around and round and round of Company. So I knew it really well. And what was it about the record and the music that spoke to you, even at such a young age? I suppose I've always been attracted to doing a Stephen Sondheim. I never really thought I would be able to. Even when I started my career as a director, I did try a couple of times, actually, when I was working in different theatres. Could I do Company? And they always was like, no. You showed them. And so when we started our own theatre company, Chris Harper said, why don't we do Company? Because I had wanted to do it. And he had the idea, I think it was all on the documentary, isn't it, that maybe it could be a woman. And then it just took a long time for me to look at it with a fine-tooth comb and work out what would it mean. And if it was a woman, which felt really great, that meant we could set it today. And I really wanted it to be set today because I wanted it to feel very relevant and have something to say to people now. Because if it's a 35-year-old guy now, well, if it's a 35-year-old guy in the 70s, I was brought up in the 70s. I don't really have much to do with the 70s. I'm sort of moving on very fast from it and pretending that I had nothing to do with it. And the 80s, as far as I was born in the 90s, so. But I wanted to be very relevant. And a 35-year-old guy now who's spending his entire evening, which is 2.5 hours, should I get married or shouldn't I get married? I mean, just don't. Really, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can have kids when you're 70. Get on with your life.
Exactly. I'm curious, in addition to taking the new perspective and not only changing Bobby's gender, but really kind of blending a lot of the other couples, the vision of the production, I think of Company, and maybe this is just because of college budgets, but like you can do Company with 2 chairs, right? You can do Company with 2 chairs and a blank stage, or even no chairs. And your Company is so sumptuous and like has the maze to that set. And I'm curious where that vision came from. How did the largesse of it evolve?
Honestly, I'd love to be able to say that I woke up one morning and I had this amazing vision and I'm really that clever, but it doesn't really happen like that. I worked for a long time with the designer, Bonnie Christie, and we thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and shouted a lot and threw things around. And we came up with some terrible ideas. And then we thought about it again. And
I'd love to see those drafts.
Yeah, they're really bad, yeah. In fact, it was at the 11th hour when we were going to do it in London with Patti, and the design was due, and she rang me the night before the deadline when we had to show the builders what we wanted it to be, and she went, "It's not good enough." I went, "What do you mean it's not good enough? We've spent hours, years on this thing." She said, "No, it's not good enough. We've got to make it better." I was like, "Okay." So then we went back to the drawing board and started again. But it was always about, for us, we wanted to really explore the fact that it was all in Bobby's head, that the whole thing lasted just a few moments in Bobby's head. And I always thought that she'd gone under the stairs and was waiting with her bottle of bourbon and hearing everybody arriving for her surprise birthday party. And her head then starts imagining things. So we wanted to make that very explicit. So I think we came up with the idea of doors and rooms and boxes and contained kind of bubbles that were boxes that were her thoughts, and that she'd go from one thought to another and to another. And although the show doesn't have a narrative, I wanted it to be clear that one thought does lead to another thought, that there is some sort of logic. And she's drinking throughout, so by the time she gets to Joanne's scene, she's really sozzled. But that's why we came up with the Alice in Wonderland thing. And then there were other George Firth. We went into everything that George Firth had ever written. We looked at every single thing he'd ever written. And obviously with Steve Sondheim, we analysed it all because I wanted to try and bring some lines in. So there are some new lines for Joanne in their scene. And there are sort of scattering new lines, but they're all George Firth. But it's mainly Company as we know it. But there is a line that Joanne has, which is, "I'm taking you through a door right now." And it just felt so appropriate to the whole concept, which was it's all inside her head. Yeah.
Well, it truly does make it not a narrative musical, but like you said, it's leading you from one. There's a reason why, Jenny comes after Susan or Sarah rather. Like there's a reason that it happens in the order that it happens. And I think that was really satisfying about this production. Patti, I want to ask you, because you famously said before doing Company that you were not doing another musical, and understandably so. The toll on the body is incredible, the toll on the emotions. I mean, what you have to do 8 times a week. But what was it about, you said you did it because Marianne was the director. So what were you hoping to learn or find from working with Marianne that made you say yes?
I think that I love to see really extravagant and unusual concepts on stage. I love to see theater on stage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like craft.
No, but
Yeah.
I think you understand what I'm saying. I think, when I saw Marat Sade, Peter Brook's Marat Sade, or Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream, I didn't know where I was. I left the theater, and I was in this magical world. Marianne creates those environments. When I saw War Horse at Lincoln Center, and when I saw Curious Incident in London, and I have to tell, I think I told you this, my husband Matt, who is a Midwestern white boy, and sports, has only stood twice in the theater, never goes to the theater, but went to Breaking the Code, stood for Derek Jacobi, and stood for Curious Incident in London. And my husband, I drag him to the theater. He's just like, he famously said in Into the Woods, if I have to hear one more time, I'm going to scream.
That's incredible.
And he also famously said, I like the guy, I just don't like his music.
I was just gonna say, but did he ever tell Stephen Sondheim, you repeat that phrase a little too much?
But so the idea that I could inhabit a world that would transport me as an actor, I want to stand on the stage and go, wow, I'm in this world myself. You know what I mean? I'm not just acting in this world. I'm lost in this world. Marianne creates those worlds, and I was really excited to be a part of her vision. And it's true, it was. And the other thing is, I've only worked with 2 female directors in my career, and one was 1978, Irene Lewis, who was the artistic director of the Hartford Stage Company. I don't even think it exists. Hartford Stage Theater, I don't think it exists anymore. And Marianne, 1978 to 18. 2 women. That's it.
Wow. More women, that's what we have to say about that.
Yeah.
You have to, more than wanting to be in company and a Marianne Elliott production, you have to want to play the role. So there did seem to be this natural ascension almost, where you sing Ladies Who Lunch at Stephen Sondheim's 80th birthday concert. Then you play Joanne in that 3-day, really quick 2011 production at Lincoln Center. What attracts you to Joanne that you say, I want to do a full run of her, full 2 runs? With London included?
It may surprise you, but I never expected to play Joanne. So I had no, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think of the right word. Playing Joanne was a surprise to me. And it was a surprise to Steve. It was, because when I sang Ladies Who Lunch the first time for him at his house in Connecticut, which had nothing to do with any of those productions, with the concert, the Philharmonic, he said to me, I'm surprised you understand the song. Because he saw me as a middle-class Long Island Italian who would not understand an Upper East Side rich woman, bred to the manor bred. And so Joanne did not interest me. I mean, it's not that it didn't interest me, but
You hadn't thought about it.
I hadn't thought about it.
Do you feel at home in her when you're playing her now?
Because of Marianne. Because of Marianne and Katrina. And Katrina. So when you have an actor on stage, no, seriously. When you have eyes and a heartbeat on stage, you can do anything. And I have that with Katrina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Katrina, you're essentially originating a role, even though that this is a revival. Like, this is a brand new character. Similarly, I'm curious, what attracted you to Bobby? What did you want to discover in company and in playing her?
Well, I tend to avoid talking too specifically about characters and Bobby because I so much value and appreciate how the audience can connect with the character on stage through their own experiences. Like you see a a painting someone has painted and you look at it and you think, oh my God, this says this to me. Oh my God, this is me. And then you realize what the artist's intentions were, and then you're like, oh. Oh, and then you're thinking about like, well, you didn't do that right, and now I feel disconnected. And so, but then also I know that sometimes you don't understand something, and then you hear the intentions that the artist had, and then you're like, oh, I get it, that's me, or I can relate. So it's this like tricky tightrope to walk. I'm so fascinated with how Bobby is performing Bobby. And this might be a thing that women can relate to, of the performance of woman and what am I supposed to be in this moment. I have to be smiley but not too smiley, funny but not too funny. I have to look good but not too good. I have to be flirty but not sexy. There's just lots of, she is also walking, ironically, a tightrope. This is very like meta sort of thing happening. So I was really fascinated by that aspect, and also why is she performing Bobby to her friends and to the all-seeing eye when she's alone? She's still performing. It's this performance of who she thinks she's supposed to be, like the perfect version of Bobby, which again is super meta because so many people have very specific ideas about who Bobby is supposed to be, because it's a revival, and also because the way that the character is written, it's sort of blurry, and so I think people really identify with something, and if they don't see that thing, then they're like, well, that's not right. Which is so interesting to me.
It's so interesting to me. Someone said, like, well, I grew up with, Bobby as a man, so I just can't see it any other way. First of all, I think that there's just such a limited imagination, but I will also say that it's just really interesting what people expect of a character to give to them, like you're saying. I guess I'll ask it a different way, though. You've played so many different roles. We've seen you, at least on Broadway, in The Band's Visit and Indecent and Once, and some of those characters have a real harshness to them. Some of them have that mysterious quality. Like, what were you excited as an actor to be able to tap into from your arsenal at this time? Were you like, I'm going to get to...
That's so funny. I never thought about it like that. I think her dealing with perfectionism was something I could definitely identify with. And why do we surround ourselves with the armor of perfectionism or people pleasing or overextending ourselves? We're maybe afraid of being unworthy of receiving love or unworthy of belonging. So that really spoke to me a lot about Bobby and what she's going through.
See, you found armor in your arsenal.
Armor.
As we mentioned, it's not just Bobby who has a gender bend or a different angle to her. Jenny, Susan, Jamie, and their partners in turn. So, Marianne, you were mentioning that you had looked at George Firth's original writing and pored over things. I'm curious, can you give me an example of something that you found that you were able to put into this new version?
I just remember that line of Joanne's. But honestly, I don't think we did use a huge amount in the end. It was. I think we were very keen to honor this particular piece, and I suppose we went a bit around the houses and eventually came back to this piece. And there are lines like Jamie says, Amy, as it was, says, "Why are we getting married so quickly? People will think I'm pregnant." And I just thought it would be so much more fun if Jamie said it. Well, you don't have to change it, really. It's just funny.
Right. It's just a different way of funny. Comedy. Yeah, absolutely. How, it's really incredible to watch that documentary and to see Stephen Sondheim so involved, to the first preview the first time around, the first preview the second time around, really very present. I'm curious, tell me about how that presence helped this company come to life. Like, what did he offer you? What was him being there? Did it feed anything that ends up in your performance on stage or in your vision on stage?
I mean, I think if I start, what was amazing about him was that he was clearly an artist. You know, he lived and breathed his work. So there he was in his 90s, and he just wanted to get stuck in. You know, he wanted to be involved, and he loved the conversation. He loved being part of the conversation. He also had approval on everybody. So, you know, everybody that I met, I would talk to him about, Katrina, you had to sing for him, didn't you? Which, how nerve-wracking was that?
Just a little nerve-wracking, just a little.
Did you sing Being Alive for him? What did you?
All of the songs, yeah.
That's intimidating.
Yeah, and he sat there in the rehearsal room and he couldn't see very well. So he would sit at this desk. Oh my God, I was sweating so much I was losing weight. And he sat at this desk with Katrina by the piano. I think there were 4 other people around all watching. I don't know how you did it, Katrina. And he sat there looking like this. And then he just went, yeah, and walked out.
Patti, you obviously worked many times with Stephen Sondheim in your career. What did he bring out in you in general, and then specifically were you able to convince him that you were able to tackle Joanne in the end?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I think so. Are you talking about the other productions that I've done with him? Or just
Yeah, I am curious how, you know, I read somewhere, which I don't know if this is true, confirm or deny, that you didn't necessarily feel right for a lot of the Sondheim roles that you played previously, but I'm wondering if there was any note that he gave or any discussion that you had that allowed you to still play those roles.
Well, I felt right about the roles. I don't know.
Oh,
Fosca?
see? Deny?
I'm a natural for Fosca. Totally. I mean, just an
Italian, yeah.
crazy person. But she's not. She's not. Desiree. You know, and
Okay, I'm glad we're correcting the record because I thought that didn't seem right to me. I felt you not feeling right about your roles.
No, first of all, I'm lucky that I got to play them, and I only played them because Wells Kaufman at the Ravinia Festival cast me. Well, he started with the New York Philharmonic. For instance, Nellie Lovett. I never thought I would play Nellie Lovett, and I got a telephone call from my agent at the time saying, the New York Phil wants you to play Nellie Lovett in Sweeney Todd with the New York Philharmonic. And my first sentence was, does Steve know? Because I wasn't sure whether Steve thought I was correct for anything, not me. I mean, I was sad that I didn't do. I mean, it broke my heart when I wasn't. I auditioned for the Bernadette's replacement in Sunday, and I didn't get it. And the first thing he did, he came down the aisle and he said, "I don't want belting," and I hadn't even opened my mouth.
I mean, you're Patti LuPone for a reason, though.
But in my defense, every role does not require belting, and I don't belt in every role.
Yes. Very true. That actually raises a question I had because I heard that you speak to the sound mixers of your shows, and I am on a mission to dispel the myths around sound design and sound production. So can you describe to us what exactly you talk to the mixer about so that you feel your sound is being presented the way your voice is and not the way someone's producing?
Well, I don't think I'm alone in saying that when I go to the theater, I don't know where the sound is coming from. I see lips moving, but I hear the sound someplace else. And so I feel as though sound designers and sound mixers are controlling my experience. And I think young actors, young singers today are relying on the microphone as opposed to knowing how to project. So because I started out without microphones, we had to project. We had to understand how to throw our voices to the back of the house. This was the acting company, and this is when we were put in situations where we were playing gymnasiums or, the altar of a church, or, we were in situations where we had to develop a technique in order to be heard. So when it comes to the voice, or when it comes to, it's the musicals. First of all, they are way too loud. Please, I'm not deaf, okay? I'm not deaf, and I can't hear the lyrics. The problem is they're mixing.
Say it again.
Exactly with the voices. The voices are not in front of the orchestra, so I cannot. And I remember the revival of Hair. The band was equally as loud as the singers. I saw the original Hair, which was a very quiet, intimate piece. And this was, and I'm being pushed back in my seat instead of being brought forward to the stage. So I have a real problem with sound in theaters now. And what I tell the sound mixers, because I can now, not because it's not because I could when I was younger, but I can now. I went, before you do this, before you think you can control my voice, listen to my voice.
Soundboard, yeah.
Listen to my voice. This is how loud I am. This is how soft I am. And that's what you have to play with. You have to understand that. But don't think you can make me loud, and don't think you can make me soft. But I've been lucky in the latter part of my career to have really good sound mixers who understand how to make a show sound relatively acoustic in an electronic world.
Thank you for that. Really. See? Now pay attention. Pay attention when you go to the theater, and pay attention on the Tony Awards when they're giving out those awards for sound design. You're going to better understand. Katrina, I want to actually rewind away from the stage into the rehearsal room. I'm curious to put you on the spot in front of your director. What is a Marianne Elliott rehearsal room like?
The best. The best. I always love rehearsal anyway, and I especially love it with Marianne because it's so much exploration. And we did 2 weeks of table work, I want to say, which is like sitting around the table, not doing any sort of blocking or anything, literally sitting with your scene partners and talking through the scene and just coming up with backstories and how we know each other and just all those, the really fun, imaginative stuff. And then once we got on our feet, there was lots of games we would get to play with each other, sort of not zip, zap, zop like theater games, but, what do you want from the person in the scene? What do they want? And then some improvisational things happening and just really fun games. And you learn the most when you're having fun, I think, in these kinds of situations because you're relaxed and not trying to force anything. So just an absolute pleasure and very stimulating intellectually as well. Just so much thinking and so much fun.
Can you tell me one of the backstories that you developed with someone in your cast?
No.
It's fair. I knew that I might get a no. There are some things that need to be kept between actors. That's fair. What about a choice that you discovered in the rehearsal room that you kind of found and it felt right to you in the moment?
I was just thinking about this the other day. The scene that I do in the second act with Claiborne Elder, who plays Andy. I don't even remember how we came up with a lot of the things that we do. There's undressing that happens. There's talking whilst undressing, and jokes on top of physical jokes on top of the written jokes. And it just happened somehow in the rehearsal, maybe in 2020 or maybe this time around. I don't know, but it felt we stumbled on something and it felt really right. And then that was that. So. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And speaking of, I think that that's also the brilliance of George Firth's book is that there's so much on the page that it allows you to really play in the moments in the beats between the dialogue. I know that I spoke to Jennifer Samard the day of Tony nominations and was asking her about her and Chris Sieber creating the hilarity that happens in that scene with the jujitsu and the brownies and the drinking and the wall sits. And she said, there is just so much on the page. I felt I knew who this was, so I knew what to do in the moments when she wasn't talking. And I think I just wanted to lay that out there and put a moment that, like, yes, this is absolutely a brilliant product of Stephen Sondheim, but it is of the partnership and absolutely a product of George Firth and his brain. One of the scenes that does shift slightly because Joanne's gender stays the same is the scene when she says to Bobby, why don't you go make it with Larry, my husband? Now in the original, it's like this threat proposition of like, make it with me. Tell me about choosing not to make it a moment of, because obviously we don't know Bobby's sexuality. It could land a different way. What was the choice to switch it to Joanne's husband rather than Joanne herself in that moment?
Yeah, that was my choice. I wanted to put some strong women on stage, which is why the genders were switched in some of the other couples. Because in the original, which of course was extremely radical at the time, all the women are kind of kooky and daffy and a bit silly, and all the men are like, oh, you don't want to get married. And so I thought, well, if it's set now, then why can't it be the woman that is the breadwinner in one of the couples? And in the other couple, why can't it be the man that is the one that's scared of heights? That's just totally fine, totally works. But I didn't want to change Joanne because she was an amazing female character. And I suppose because I'm getting older, even though I was born in the 90s, I'm really interested to see more older women's stories out there. And I thought it was extremely interesting that she was such a fascinating character, Joanne, because she's so hidden and she's so about control, and she's probably had an amazing life and was very beautiful and had lots of money and lots of men, and she's at an age now where she doesn't have that. And I think if you've had that in your life and you're a woman who's older and you don't feel like you have it anymore, that has a lot to say to a Bobby. And I think she finds it hard to trust that people love her, which is something that I completely understand. And I think she has a brilliant relationship with her husband, Larry. And I think it's hard for her to accept and trust that. And then she's friends with this gorgeous young woman who seems to have everything and a career, damn her. And I don't think Joanne has had a career. And she's jealous. And her husband and this beautiful young woman are friends, so she pushes it into a place that she thinks it might go anyway. And if she can be in control of it, then she's less vulnerable. That was interesting to me.
How does it feel playing out between the two of you night after night? Does it feel true to that tightrope of vulnerability, in control, not in control?
Yes, I think it does. Because I think I understand that as well. I understand not feeling worthy of being loved and also being incredibly insecure in love. So I don't find it hard to do that.
And the sad irony is Bobby feels exactly the same way. She also feels very insecure about love and feeling unworthy of being loved or trusting that anyone could love her. So they have this, Joanne and Bobby have this really simpatico sort of thing happening, and I think that's really beautiful and sort of sad.
And I think that's the brilliance of this version of the show right there, right? These different generation of women feeling that same thing. One has gone through on her third husband, one too afraid to have her first. I mean, I think it's profound. I also think it's profound that we get to see a woman with 3 boyfriends, right? And it's this thing of like, she's non-committal. And speaking from my own personal interpretation, from when I see Bobby as a man, it seems like he's using them a little bit more. They're not really significant to him. Whereas with your version, there's something in each of them that is scratching some itch of Bobby's, and maybe not one of them is her full package, but it's really empowering, I'll say, as a woman, to sit in that audience and see a woman trying to figure it out by doing. See a woman being non-committal without being judged, without being slut-shamed. It's just really powerful. And I have to thank you all for that piece of it. We also have to talk about this ensemble. Come on. Come on. And it's funny because I never thought of Company as an ensemble show, even though there are many characters. And we do see it as an ensemble in Another 100 People, in the background of the Ladies Who Lunch, the club scene. Like, where did that idea come from, to make sure there were people around all the time, to make sure that it felt a little more crowded? I guess, why have the company of company present so often when I don't, or maybe it's just my memory, not thinking that they've always been there?
Well, I've never seen it before, so I didn't know that you could. But I suppose, what it feels crowded maybe because of the boxes that they're in. So like the very first box that Bobby is in, everybody goes into. I do remember that in rehearsals, actually, the very first time Steve Sondheim saw that in rehearsals, it was in London. And he had seen the design. I think he'd seen it. So it wasn't a very visual person, so he maybe didn't really take it in. But he did see the box in the rehearsal room, and when everybody went into that box, he started crying. And I thought, oh my God, my career's over. And he said it was absolutely what I wrote, that she felt, or he, whoever Bobby is, felt very claustrophobic amongst all his friends. So I think maybe the boxes really help that kind of crowded sense.
Katrina, you're the one experiencing, whether it's full of people or whether it's an empty stage and just you, how does that titrate what you're doing?
Titrate?
I know, I was going to say the same thing.
Let me
Big
just
word.
hold on. Okay. Chemistry class coming in. Okay, that's an interesting question. I think it's kind of like, that's more of an answerable for Marianne or Bunny Christie, our set designer, or someone who's seeing the whole picture, because when you're in the forest, you're just in the forest doing things to get around the trees. So I don't know exactly how to answer that question very well.
Marianne, do you have an answer?
Give me the question again. I'm just hearing titrates a lot in my head.
I was asking about titrating the performance when, when she is either amongst this full ensemble against the moments when she is completely alone on stage, and how that impacts the dynamic of her character, her experience.
Well, I don't know if this answers you, because I'm definitely looking up titrate. I'm going to use it a lot. Is that we did make a very deliberate choice that every time Bobby sang, it's the only time you hear from her. It's the only time you actually hear what is going on for her, because in the scenes, or when everybody else is singing, or even when she's singing with everybody else, she is absolutely pleasing them. It's about them. She never drives the scenes. I call them driving. So it's the person who actually pushes the scene on is the driver. She never does that, even though she's the main protagonist. So when she's singing, which is why we wanted Marry Me a Little to definitely be in this production, she's on her own. There's no set. Everything else just hisses off. And she's on her own in this massive blue world, so that we can just focus on her as a jewel that comes out to us rather than any set. Yeah,
I can't imagine no Marry Me a Little. That's the whole midpoint of her journey. I joke that I'm in the Marry Me a Little phase. Marry me a little. Staying on the ensemble for a second, Katrina and Patti, I'm curious, is there a moment that one of your fellow cast members creates that you either love to watch from off stage or wish you could watch from off stage night after night?
Well, I have to say that Greg Hildreth and I stand backstage of You Could Drive a Person Crazy just to see if the three boys will slam the door in unison, and they never do. Sometimes. And we run backstage and we go, yes, sir, trash. There is a great goodwill in this company. And that was Greg. Greg called him trash. I did not. But there's great goodwill in this company, and that is so rare in a musical. I know that you had it on Van's Visit, and it just be able to have a community of people respect and care and support each other in what is a competitive environment. You know, it's really wonderful. So there are several, for me, because I'm off stage. Katrina's never off stage. I'm off stage, and there's a lot of moments that I cannot wait to hear or I cannot wait to see, and support, basically support. Just to come off and, you know, when Nikki comes off after her first ghost, her first nurse, what the hell is she? Angel? She's a ghost, she's a nurse, priest. Oh boy. We have a little exchange, because I always take my place, you know, waiting for the ahs and the oohs, and we have a little exchange there. And I have a little exchange with Nikki when she comes off, and a little exchange with Christopher when she comes off. And I tell Jen Simard every single, well, not every night, but enough nights that she and Chris set the tone for the show, for the audience. Yeah, it's up to them. It really is up to them. They tell the audience, you have permission to laugh. And once that happens, the floodgates open.
Yes. Katrina, is there something for you that you enjoy, even if you're on stage technically?
The thing that comes to mind right away is Terrence Archie, who plays Larry, does some incredible. I mean, that scene with him is just really beautiful, and his gorgeous work on the monologue where he talks about Joanne and really pins her is just really. Every night, I'm always like, oh, what's he gonna say? Like. That's how amazing he is. And then at the beginning of the scene, he's doing some incredible dance moves just upstage. And I think a lot of the people sitting in the orchestra can't quite see, but the mezzanine can see. And he's really doing some real good moves back there.
Marianne, did you want to add?
Yeah, I know this sounds cheesy, but honestly, for me, it's their scene. I know I've seen this show about 59,000 million times. I know it's
made
so
up for
well.
all that lost time when you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, there you go. I know it so well because we did it in London, and we did it here before the pandemic, and then we re-rehearsed it with a full rehearsal, and then, you know, it's on now. So I know it really, really well. And, you know, I do really annoying things like, come on, you should be on cue there. You're dropping your line there. What did you mean by that? But when we get to the Joanne Bobby scene, it just always takes my breath away, as it always did in rehearsals. I mean, Patti LuPone is not underrated, but she is underrated. She should be playing Medea. She should be playing Lady Macbeth. It's true. I couldn't believe it when we were rehearsing in London. I seriously couldn't believe it. I was like, every time we rehearsed, we went into a deeper layer and a deeper layer and a deeper layer. She can do any fucking thing. And Katrina Lenk, you know, I've got lots of shows we're going to do together now.
Brilliant. What was that?
Nothing.
Katrina, you mentioned the kind of improv dance that goes on upstage, but this company is also the most choreographed company I have ever seen. I mean, Side by Side is intense. Yes, take that drink, because I don't know that I would be able to do that. Patti, what went through your mind when you first saw the Liam Steele's choreography?
Well, there's 2 words or 3 words that are in front of Side by Side, and they are, oh my God. And it's always, oh my God, Side by Side. And we all feel the same way. It's like, Oh my God, it's side by side. Or, oh my God, 8 shows a week. Oh my God, it's side by side.
But, I mean, it's kind of incredible. Not saying that it's not a challenge for everyone and not saying that it's more of a challenge for you. What I'm saying is that someone of your stature, no, seriously, no, I'm really not.
You should.
But someone of your stature, I mean, who is a legend in this business saying, yep, I'm gonna pull up my chair right next to my other ensemble members. And I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna put on the red dress in TikTok, and I am part of this ensemble. It's a huge deal.
Yeah. But I am an ensemble player. That's the way I was trained at school. And I've always thought that the most interesting picture is the entire picture, not someone downstage in the spotlight and people in the background, that you can barely see. The entire picture, to me, is the event. But I was part of an ensemble at Juilliard from my very first year, and then for 8 years for Juilliard and for the acting company, we were an ensemble, and to understand an ensemble is to be in a situation where you have to be an ensemble because the odds are against you. Either it's a bad director or something is not pulling together, so you must circle each other and protect each other and support each other and elevate each other. And to me, that is the reason I do it. I love the environment of actors. I love the environment of actors. I love being able to be among actors doing what they do best and with the purest intentions.
And it shows. Katrina, speaking of what they do best, I said it to you backstage, but your being alive, it really does. It does something to me, and I think it does something to a lot of people. Because it's a formidable task that you watch all of these couples who really do not seem to make coupledom appealing. And yet the work of this song is to start by saying, I don't get it, and by the end to say, I get it. Or I'm not open to this, I'm open maybe to the possibility of this, if not completely open to it. What is your experience of singing that song?
I think because I have to be a little bit annoying and be super protective of myself in this instance, just because I do have to do it every night, and it does require a huge amount of vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say too much, but so much is in the song as it's written. If you follow the crumbs that Stephen Sondheim has put there, you will find the logic that's there. And Marianne was really great about also just working through those ideas that are laid out in the song. And it's, yes, it's about like, should I be with someone? Should I not be with someone? And underneath that, it's. I think there's more to it about like, will I be vulnerable? Will I be myself? And we've talked about this too with Marianne. There's like the moment when a seed has to sprout. There's an intense amount of pressure on the inside of the seed, and also an intense amount of pressure, from the dirt and the soil packed on top of it. And I think being alive is where this person has come to the point where the pressure to remain inside is worse than the pressure to expand. Like the growing is not as painful as staying the same. And so I think in that song there is that moment where the seedling first comes out.
That's a beautiful visual. Okay, we have some audience questions. This one is from Edward. Thank you, Edward. Are there any artists or trends you see as leading the next wave of innovation in musical theater? Are there any, let's say trends, I'll limit it to trends rather than artists. Are there any trends you see as leading the next wave of innovation in musical theater?
Any trends?
Well, I think Strange Loop and Michael Jackson and that show and the way that story is told and who is telling that story and who is writing that story, like just more inclusive writers and stories, I think is I don't know if it's a trend. I'm hoping it's more than a trend and is going to be what will happen next.
Allison wants to know from Patti, since you have done Ladies Who Lunch with a female Bobby and a male Bobby, how is Ladies Who Lunch different? Do the lyrics resonate differently at all based on who you're delivering it to? And that's from Allison.
It's generally a standalone number where Joanne isn't actually singing it to Bobby. She's singing it to the audience, perhaps. And in this particular case, I have an acting partner. I have someone that I can share this thought with that will be my patriot, my musketeer, while I discover the song about me. As I, rail against my class. So that is the difference. I'm actually singing it to a woman, another woman.
Thank you, Allison.
Making sense?
Yes. Becca wants to know, what is your favorite rehearsal memory? Sounds like Katrina really loves your rehearsal room, but Marianne's face does not.
No. It's just I can't remember things like that. Sort of. Oh, okay. I've got one, which is when we came back after the pandemic, and you probably all know we were about to open, and the pandemic struck, and we went into lockdown, and we came back about a year and a half later, and we went back into rehearsals, and everybody was masked. And in the first week, everybody was relearning the songs, which is quite frustrating for a director because you just have to sit there and wait for everybody to learn the songs. Like, can I get on with this? No, okay. But then we did a sing-through of the whole piece. It was probably the fourth day. I mean, it was extremely emotional coming back anyway and seeing everybody when we thought we probably wouldn't be able to. And it was weird to be masked, and it was coming back in a way that we didn't really want to because everyone was still quite fearful. So it wasn't what we'd had imagined. But nevertheless, there we were on our fourth day, and we sang through the whole thing, and I just listened to it. And it sounded so relevant. It was so emotional. Everybody knew the songs from a year and a half ago, so they were bringing such richness to the singing and such trust with each other. They were truly an ensemble. They were very joyous to be back in the room. And a lot of the songs are quite joyous, but there's a thread of loneliness as well through the whole piece. And I just heard the loneliness, the isolation, the loneliness amongst the busyness of New York City. And I was just so thrilled to be back in that room with those people, hearing that sublime music with these gorgeous people. I remember that.
I don't know that you can top that, but if you do have a favorite rehearsal memory, have at it.
I have no memory.
All your memories are in Alice's Wonderland. Patti, if you could play any of Katrina's previous roles, which would you choose? Dina from the band's Visit. And Katrina, if you could play any of Patti's previous roles, which would you choose?
I can't even answer that. I've never even thought 2 seconds about what that could be.
I don't know why a strong Evita came to the front for me. A strong Eva Perón. Yeah? All right.
I can't even remember the roles that I've played.
That was like on Watch What Happens Live when they kept putting roles that you had played with 2 other actors, and Cynthia Nixon appropriately just kept saying Patti LuPone.
Although the roles I haven't played, but 2 other actors, yeah.
Yes, well, also those. before the shutdown, at the end of the show, this is someone who has seen it before and after and has a really good memory. Before the shutdown, at the end of the show, Bobby said, "But who am I going to take care of?" When the show came back, Bobby now says, "But who is going to take care of me?" What inspired that change?
Wow.
God. Hello. Well, how the scene segues into being alive is always a tricky segue. I thought that Bobby actually spends her entire time looking after other people. So actually the change would be to reverse it. That rather than who was I going to look after, it should be who's going to look after me. And if Joanne knows her very well, which she does, she's never said that before. She's never wanted anybody in her life to look after her and be there all the time. You know, she says, you know, they're there all the time. And so if she finally says something that is instinctive, that she doesn't really know that she's saying it, it just comes out, because by that point in the evening, she's almost ready. And Joanne hears it and puts a mirror up to it and says, "Did you hear what you just said? You've never said anything like that before." So it felt more relevant to Bobby as we knew her to switch it around. And I did ask Steve.
Brilliant question. It makes me want to ask something a little personal, which you can deflect if you want, but I'm curious, do you see either your current self or a former version of yourself in Bobby? All three of you, I ask. In that question of ambivalence of, do I want this, do I not want this?
Not me.
Patty is definitive. She is sure.
No, I mean, I think I always wanted a relationship.
Yeah, no, I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't know what to.
Yeah.
So I wasn't ambivalent about that, ever. They were ambivalent about me.
I think it probably does speak to me, though. I mean, I wasn't in that situation when I was Bobby's age. I've seen a lot of women who are in that situation. But I suppose if I really think about it, I always wanted to be I wanted to have a career. I always wanted to have a career. I really wanted to have a career. And when I became a director, I really wanted to be a director. And I didn't think being with someone or having a child would be helpful to that. Definitely. I mean, I was wrong, because I have got a child and I've got a husband, and they're both great. But I still to this day think that I didn't have a second child because I thought I wouldn't be able to. Yeah, so I suppose I hadn't really actually ever thought about it till now. Christ. But I think, yeah, probably the ambivalence was, and I understand it, yeah.
Katrina, even though you're the one who steps into her shoes every night, do you feel connected specifically to that ambivalence, or even from your past?
Yeah, and it's also, part of the actor's job is to find a way to connect with whatever is in the character. So, yes, of course, yes.
Yeah. All right, the last question. The line, what do you get? What do you get? What do you get? What have you gotten so far from company, from this experience of company?
Well, I got to work with Patti LuPone and Katrina Lenk and Stephen Sondheim.
I got to finally work with Marianne Elliott and Katrina Lenk.
And I got to work with Patti LuPone and Marianne Elliott.
I have to say that what else I've gotten out of this was because Marianne was our director, and because what came into the room because of Marianne was great joy, great support, great love. And we don't have that in a rehearsal room that often. It's always, especially in a musical, which is a very dictatorial environment. And we didn't have that. What we had was, Marianne said it, we were in a safe place to fail. And so we were free, and we were loved, and we were supported. What more can you ask for? You can work. You can work freely. And so it was joyful. It was joyful. It's true.
I have to make the pun that it just sounds like good company. It just sounds like good company. Well, thank you all so much for spending your night off with us. Thank you all for coming. Be sure that you see Company at the Bernard Jacobs Theater on Broadway. Get your tickets now before they win all the Tony Awards, and it becomes even harder. Watch the documentary this Friday on PBS. Tell your friends to watch the documentary and buy a ticket. Thank you so much for being here.